Mislim da je tehnički sve spremno i da možemo da počnemo. Uvaženi gosti, poštovane koleginice i kolege novinarke i novinari, dobar dan i dobrodošli u Medija centar na konferenciju koju organizuje Specijalna izvestiteljka Ujedinjenih nacija za slobodu mišljenja i izražavanja. Povod za današnju konferenciju je poseta Specijalne izvestiteljke Ujedinjenih nacija Srbiji i Kosovu, tokom koje će oceniti slobodu mišljenja i izražavanja, uključujući i slobodu medija. Specijalna izvestiteljka Ujedinjenih nacija za zaštitu i unapređenje slobode mišljenja i izražavanja, gospođa Ajrin Kan, je u zvaničnoj poseti Srbiji od 28. marta do današnjeg dana. Izvestiteljka Ujedinjenih nacija će proceniti uživanje prava na slobodu mišljenja, izražavanja i slobodu medija u Srbiji i na Kosovu, uključujući implementaciju zakona i politika koje utiču na rad medija i civilnog društva, kao i na položaj novinara. Razgovarala je sa predstavnicima vlade, sudstva, Narodne skupštine, nezavisnih institucija, Ujedinjenih nacija, međunarodnih organizacija, ambasada, medija, akademije, borcima za ljudska prava i sa akterima civilnog društva. Ja imam nekoliko tehničkih napomena. Prva je da oprema za simultani prevod je desno od predsjedavajućeg stola i možete je koristiti. Druga molba je za novinare kada budu postavljali pitanja nakon uvodnog izlaganja gospođe Ajrin Kan da obavezno zatraže mikrofon i predstave se imenom i redakcijom. Zamolit ću vas da utišate mobilne telefone. Nakon uvodnog izlaganja, naravno, moći ćete da postavljate pitanja. Zahvaljujem se i dajem reč specijalnoj izvestiteljki Ujedinjenih nacija za slobodu mišljenja i izražavanja, gospođi Ajrin Kan. Izvolite.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm very pleased to meet you here at the end of my official visit to Serbia and Kosovo. I want to start by first introducing myself, Ajrin Kan. I was appointed by the UN Human Rights Council to this position in August 2020. A special rapporteur is not an employee of the UN. I am an independent expert. I am appointed by the member states, by the governments of the UN, and I report to the member states of the Human Rights Council and to the United Nations General Assembly. The purpose of my visit, as was explained, was at the request of the government of Serbia. The government of Serbia has an open invitation to all special rapporteurs, and I'm here at their invitation to look at the state of freedom of expression in Serbia. I have had the privilege of meeting the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Minister for Justice, the Minister for Information and Telecommunications, the Minister for Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue, as well as officials from the Ministry of Interior. I also met the Speaker of the National Assembly, the President of the Constitutional Court, judges of the Supreme Court of Cassation, officials from the Prosecutor's Office, as well as the head of the regulatory authority, REM, and the protector, the ombudsman, the deputy commissioners for protection of equality, and the commissioner for public information and personal data. So as you can see, a very wide range of officials at a senior level. In addition to that, I have met journalists, media outlets, human rights defenders, civil society leaders, academics, scholars, and so on. Now, after listening to everyone, I have come to some conclusions. I will share them with you now. And there is also a press release, a written press release that is available for you. First of all, I am encouraged by the government's plans to reform laws. I have been told that the media legislation will be changed, reformed, brought up to the standards of the European Union and international law. That is a positive thing that I acknowledge in my report. However, at the same time, I am concerned about a number of issues, and I have called on the government of Serbia to seek to make improvements in these areas so that the laws can work effectively. Now, what I have shared with the government today are my preliminary findings. I will be writing a detailed report which will come out in due course. So what I'm going to share with you as well are my preliminary findings. The first finding is that Serbia has a strong constitutional and legal framework to protect freedom of expression, and that these laws are being strengthened by the government. The plans and proposals are there, and I will be following the plans and proposals as the laws are developed. However, there is a gap between what is promised on paper and what is actually being done in practice in terms of policies or actions by the government and by the institutions. And this gap needs to be closed if the laws are going to be effective. And I see three major issues that need to be tackled in order to close this gap. The first one is, what alarms me, is the toxic public discourse from politicians or public officials, which are then amplified by tabloids, scapegoating media, journalists, human rights defenders, ethnic minorities, LGBTI, and those who are critical of the government. When journalists are labeled as foreign agents, traitors, or enemies of the state, it undermines the public's trust in the media, increases the likelihood of attacks or threats against the journalists, and chills media freedom and democratic debate, leads to self-censorship by many journalists. Freedom of expression is not a license to harass, intimidate, or threaten critical voices. And that takes me to my second concern, and that is the ability of institutions. Serbia has many institutions, the courts, for example, the regulatory authority, the capacity and the willingness of these institutions to protect freedom of expression while addressing speech that is either hate speech or likely to cause serious harm. And I have called on the government to ensure that all the organs of the state, all the institutions of the state actually implement the constitutional protection and the laws upholding freedom of expression while combating hate speech and disinformation. Given the role that the tabloid media here in Serbia play in spreading hate speech, I am concerned that REM, the electronic media regulatory body, is failing to take appropriate action against the violators, failing to promote pluralism in media content, and allowing smear campaigns and harassment to continue. I have called on the authorities, the government in Serbia, to ensure that REM is independent, effective, and accountable, that it is actually carrying out the mandate to regulate the media in accordance with the constitution and the laws of this country, as well as the international obligations of Serbia. So my first concern is this toxic environment. My second concern is the failure of institutions, and in particular, REM. My third concern is the safety of journalists, and I have asked the authorities in my meetings with the Minister for Justice, in my meetings with the courts and the prosecutor's office to speed up investigation and prosecution of cases, also to investigate the long-standing cases of a number of journalists who have been killed in Serbia, whose cases still remain unresolved. Now, my final point to round up is that adoption of laws alone is not sufficient to protect freedom of expression. What is needed is strong, unequivocal political leadership and the commitment to uphold international standards. The government is making legal commitments, but those legal commitments must be translated into action, and that, of course, is the responsibility of the political leadership at the highest levels of this country. Now, as I mentioned during my visit, I also traveled to Kosovo. I was there on the 3rd, just checking the dates, 3rd and 4th of April, where I met with the Deputy Prime Minister, representatives from the Office of Good Governance, the Legal Office, the Office of Public Communications, as well as the Commissioner for Information, members of the Assembly who are working in the Committee on Human Rights and in the committee that deals with media, the Ombudsperson and so on, but I also, and the National Television, RTK. I also met a wide range, and I say a wide range of media, Albanian-speaking media, as well as Serbian language media. I met with NGOs, civil society members from all parts of Kosovo, from the north, those who are working in the south, those who are working in Pristina. And of course, I met with UNMIK and the international organizations there. And there, I saw a pluralistic media landscape. However, there is much that can be done, that must be done also by the authorities there to strengthen media freedom, in particular to ensure inclusion of all media, and that means applying the language policy, the 2 official languages equally, and to ensure that support is given to independent Serbian outlets in particular. I have also called on the political leaders in Kosovo also to create an enabling environment, a safe and enabling environment for journalists to carry out their work. So I will stop here now, and I'm open to answering your questions.
Zahvaljujem se gospođi Ajrin Kan. Izvolite, možete postavljati pitanja. Izvolite, da li se neko javlja da postavi pitanje? Izvolite, koleginice. Zamolit ću samo da se predstavite.
Na engleskom da postavim ili?
Možete, kako god, imamo simultani prevod.
Ok. Katarina Sremčić, novinska agencija Beta. Zanima me glavne razlike koje ste videli između stanja u medijima u Prištini i u Beogradu i da li ste možda posmatrali proces kako mediji izveštavaju o dijalogu dole i u Srbiji?
Could you repeat the second question?
Da li ste pratili kako mediji izveštavaju o dijalogu Beograda i Prištine, kako izveštavaju mediji u Prištini, a kako u Beogradu?
Okay. I have deliberately tried not to compare the situation in Belgrade and Pristina because the political environment, the economic situation, the social situation is different in Serbia and what is happening in Kosovo. What I have tried to do is to hold both authorities and the media in both Kosovo and in Serbia to international standards of media freedom. That means, is there proper regulation of broadcast and print media? Is there freedom and safety for the journalists to be able to report? Is there editorial freedom? Are there particular efforts made to ensure that media is diverse, so it's not only in one language? Both multilingualism, of course, is very important in this part of the world. And from that perspective, the media environment is very different. Here in Belgrade, you have large outlets. You have a lot of what is called tabloid media that is operating, private ownership of large media outlets that here, and well-established institutions going back a long time. In Kosovo, of course, many of the institutions are recent in the sense that they have come up in the last 20 years or so. The media environment is economically troubled because it is saturated, I'm told. There are more outlets than is possible to survive in a commercial way. There is also a lot of international assistance that is being provided in Kosovo to the authorities and to the media in terms of development, which of course is not the situation here. What I have found here in Serbia, as I mentioned to you, is a very high level of toxic dialogue that takes place in what is called the tabloid media. That is sometimes encouraged by the tabloid media, sometimes instigated by others, political figures or others, and that then spreads and poisons the whole environment at a rate which is quite shocking. And that actually kills the possibility for media to operate well here. And that is of deep concern to me. And that is why I have pressed here, for example, to look at the regulatory bodies, but also to look to see how the laws are being applied, and for those who have the leadership position here, whether that is in politics or in the community, for example, with the religious leaders or with civil society leaders, for all of them has the responsibility. They have freedom of expression, but what I'm saying is exercise your freedom of expression with responsibility, and particularly calling on media outlets as well, and calling on the regulator to do her job. And her job is to ensure that there is pluralism in content, and that there is a general environment in which people can have a debate and don't feel threatened by the nature of the debate, by the sort of threatening, aggressive, divisive nature of it.
Da, naravno.
Kakvu ste reakciju dobili od predstavnika institucije u Srbiji kada ste im predstavili...
Možete li ponoviti?
Kakvu ste reakciju dobili od predstavnika institucija kada ste im predstavili vaše zaključke i osim nekih uveravanja da će poštovati to, da li vidite neku realnu političku volju, pošto ste i sami pomenuli da osim toga što postoje zakoni, oni trebaju da se primene? Kakav je vaš uvid nakon svih sastanaka?
I don't want to preempt what the institutions will do here. I appreciate that the government of Serbia agreed to my visit. I'm here, they invited me, they gave me all the appointments I asked, and so I'm working from the assumption that if you invite an international body to come here and you want the international body to examine how things are and make recommendations, that they will take my recommendations seriously. Obviously, there will be others. There is a period of time now to have a discussion. My final report will only be ready next year, so there is a time to continue that conversation with the government and to see how far they will go. Now, where the laws and processes are concerned, there are some of these proposals are already in action. My concern is on the implementation. There are good laws on the books right now. Why are they not being implemented? The way I see it is there is an opportunity here. There is an opportunity for the leadership to actually implement what is in the law into action, or there is also the possibility that they will not take it seriously. They will continue the way it is happening, in which case the plans that are being put into place will not work. So what I'm doing is giving my best advice to the government that if you are serious about the laws that you're introducing, then you need to take care that there is no gap between what you put in the law, what you do, and what you say. That gap has to close. And secondly, that you have to ensure that you have institutions that take care of it. You know, all media are not angels. Media are commercial entities. They will carry out certain things that do not necessarily meet the requirements, and the regulatory body should act. I have been very impressed by your Commissioner for Equality, who has taken these issues very seriously, who has herself commented, that commissioner herself has commented that REM is not using all the tools that are available to it. It can sanction, it can punish by forcing programs to go off the air or take other measures. It is not using the measures that it has. When the institution itself is saying that, another institution is saying that, then the government needs to take it seriously. The government has submitted a report to the United Nations in Geneva, which will be examined in May, where the government itself in that report says that it has been unable to reach its zero tolerance policy on hate speech. So the government itself is recognizing that it hasn't achieved what it said it would achieve. And I'm trying to put my advice to the government saying, these are the things that need to be done to reach your own goals.
Thank you.
Hvala, izvolite. Da li ima još pitanja? Ukoliko se niko ne javlja da postavi pitanje, zahvalila bi se gospođi Kan i naravno zahvalila bi se novinarima što su prisustvovali konferenciji za novinare. Hvala vam još jednom.